Welcome back to the channel. Hopefully you're all having a good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this video. Now, this is more so like just an explanation type of video. I'm gonna be explaining the different types of buffs and what is so different about them. Like you see in the title and the thumbnail, there are actually well, technically there's three, but the main ones I want to focus on are the two. So active buffs and passive buffs. Now, what is active buffs and passive buffs? Now, this is something that I kind of just, I don't know if I made it up on my own, but it's sort of a lingo I use on my channel, right? I don't know if you heard it anywhere else, but it's sort of a lingo I use on my channel. Basically, it's just to differentiate what it like the blue buffs versus the non-blue buffs. So let me explain, right? So right here you see the buff effects. So all of these are buff effects, right? All of these, right? Protection buffs and increased stats in effects of buffs, right? So you have increased attack, you have increased attack related stats, increased defense, etc., etc., and these will all appear as blue icons above the character's health bar. What this means is they can be removed / they have a time limit. So when you do this, you are susceptible to having them removed. You waste out of time. There's a certain number of turns you have until they leave. But blue buffs are basically active buffs, and what this means is these are buffs that characters have when using skills. So there are a few oddities with passives, right? So when you use when passive skills come into play, let's take Assault Melee for example. He has a passive skill where if you attack an ally or him, you will be giving him an active buff that increases all his stats. So think of it like Escanors, right? Think of it like the one Escanors. I want to see actually if they have it. If they have it, I can just show it there. Let's see if they have it. Don't know if they do actually, which is unfortunate. So I don't think I can show it. But basically, right, the one Escanor's passive, like his passive, it will show up as a buff like this. On top of his health bar, it'll be gray. So that cannot be removed by any means necessary. It cannot be removed. Meliodas can. Meliodas' buff, it can be removed because it's blue. So there is a difference. Now, when we take into consideration Gother's passive, right? Let's look at Gother's passive, for example. Gother has a passive, Green Gother, has a passive where he increases allies' attack-related stats by 7% as long as they are all from different races. This is a passive buff, which means it will not appear above his health bar, which means you cannot remove it. You can decrease it. You can decrease this passive buff, but you cannot remove it. So let's say if you fight an enemy who decreases attack-related stats by 30%, it will overpower his 7% until he reaches his max, which is 35%, right? So you can decrease it, you can overpower it, but you cannot remove it at all unless you kill Gother. So that is a huge difference because you can stack them. You can stack active and passive buffs, right? So for example, if I had Gother with Blue Easton, which I did before, Blue Easton, she increases attack related stats, right? So you can use it with Green Hellbrim too if you want, but if you do it with Blue Easton, she will increase your attack related stats, and then further with Gother increasing it by 7% as long as the enemies are of different races, a further 7% it will stack and it will give you a massive increase to your attack related stats, which is very good. The only difference is Easton has a time limit and she can also have her buff removed, right? Because this is an active buff. This is an active buff that is, on your character. So think of it as anyone who uses a skill, it's an active skill, right? It's an active skill. You are pressing, you are clicking a card in order for it to activate. Whereas if you have someone like Gother, or let's even say like Easton, Green Easton, right? You have someone like Green Easton who is you know, doing it as well. She also has a passive buff. It's similar to Gother's, but it's not really the same because it doesn't increase attack. But it is very similar. So hers is also a passive buff. And Blue Easton as well. So Blue Easton actually has like two, technically. Because she has her active buff card, which increases attack-related stats, right? Her buff card, which increases attack-related stats. And then she has this. Increases the hero's basic stats by 5% for each buff on allies and enemies. That is a passive buff. That will not go above the character's health bar. It won't be considered a blue active buff. It's literally going to be a passive buff that you have to increase your basic stats. So she technically has two, which is very good. Very, very cool. Very, very good to have. But again, Green Easton, we're going to just keep looking at her. Green Easton, again, passive buff. Passive buff. As long as you put debuffs on the enemies, she will give you pierce rate, crit chance, and crit damage by 5%, and it will stat for up to 40%. Now, keep in mind, you can stack this. You can stack this with Gother's. You can actually stack that with Gother's passive. So if you get 40 plus 35%, what is that? Trying to do mental math here. I think that's 75%. That's good. That's very, very good. Let's take a look at Droll, for example, because Droll's on the thumbnail, right? Let's take a look at Droll. Droll has this. Increases allies' attack by 3% for every buff applied to the hero. So he will give himself a passive, or I guess everyone, a passive attack buff by 3%. Doesn't max, by the way, for every buff he has. And he also has an active buff on his commandment. So he will give, you know, active buffs to all of his allies. You guys already know this, right? He will give an active buff that increases resistance. So basically, Solidify. Solidify, he will give for 3 turns, and he can stack this up to 3 times. So 3 active buffs on top of his buff card that gives him 3 more active buffs, which is very strong. Very, very good unit, by the way. Very, very good unit. So yeah, very, very powerful cards. You know, active buffs and passive buffs. So this is what I mean when, if you ever hear me say like, yeah, he's giving himself an active buff, it basically means he's giving himself some sort of blue buff, right? Some sort of blue buff that can be removed or has a time limit. But if he has a passive buff, like the ones we just saw, he is you know, you can't take that away. You can decrease it, you just can't take it away. Even Assault Melee, right? Assault Meliodas. Okay, I guess I gotta put Meliodas. Even Assault Meliodas, right? He has a passive that gives himself an active buff because it's increasing his stats by 5%. Like I said, this will actually appear above his health bar. So it's an active buff. You can remove it. I kind of wish it wasn't an active buff, but then he wouldn't be able to really like proc his amplify card. So I get why they did that. I get why they did that. It just sucks it can be removed, right? But yeah, so that's very, very good for Assault Melee. But again, very strong. Very, very strong. I think even Lolly Merlin has like an active buff. Sorry for the background noise. I guess it's like what's the name? A truck or whatever, ambulance. But yeah, during the enemy's turn, each enemy skill cannot deal more than 40% of the hero's max HP, and then she will increase her attack related stats by 1% per 4% remaining HP when using skills. So this is basically a passive buff as well. So very, very good. But yeah, there are a lot of characters that have passive buffs and active buffs in the game. But that's gonna be it for my little explanation of what actives or what active and passive buff cards are. Sorry if the explanation was a little blotchy. I did my best to explain it. But if you did enjoy and you made it this far, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and as always, I will see you all next time.